Alright, I'm not sure what sort of form these episode reviews are going to take, probably a mix between classic overanalyzing and the review style I use for my complete show review. That's mostly because I'll never get away with pausing every 10 seconds to talk about something tiny I noticed. That's just not how the copyright system works with these new shows. So will these reviews be far more nitpicky than my show overview one was? Oh yes, very much so. Will I point out something that's on screen for like 3 frames? No, probably not, or at least not very often. Maybe the pure overanalyzing style videos will be possible someday, but for now we're gonna have to find a comfortable medium. I imagine these episodes will center more on a handful of bigger talks I want to have on how and what the show did, as well as covering a bunch of slightly smaller moments as well, both positive and negative, but the method could evolve as we move on. Alright, enough chatter, let's get into it and see how this video turns out. Well, you'll notice immediately that our story is being told out of order, and that order is in fact in order. And I think these opening scenes with Sozin here might explain too much. What, the show has a problem with exposition? You don't say. No, but in a different way. The cartoon had the benefit of having a lot of intrigue in the opening episodes of you learning about the current world alongside of Aang. Aang's all turned around, he doesn't know what's going on, which is good because you can discover it along with him. Despite being very familiar with this world, Aang is still a bit of a fish out of water. There was intrigue in not knowing exactly why the war began. There was intrigue in not knowing if Aang was truly the last airbender, despite the title of the show. There was intrigue in not knowing why Aang was in the iceberg. There was some merit to not knowing it all. It's like, you know, in the Shawshank Redemption, and this isn't a spoiler, it's the first scene of the movie. You don't know if Andy did it, it's just like a nice little question mark for the viewer to have to think back on. That movie would have had a very different vibe if things were told more in order. But with the way the live action has set up the story, we're starting from absolute square one. We're told why the Fire Nation is starting the war, and we're shown explicitly that all the airbenders are massacred, because every single one of them is present for a celebration, and we're shown why Aang is in the iceberg. Now that's all fine and dandy, it may not be as immediately interesting, but as an adaptation, we're switching things up, fine. But where the problem lies is that we know all of these things, but Aang still needs to learn them. Some of the exposition in the middle of the first episode isn't even exposition for the viewer, it's exposition for the character alone, and I think that's just a complete breakdown in writing. That's just gonna be boring for a viewer. We've lost all of the mystery and have had shit explained to us 1.5 times.
Water. Earth.
The use of the opening is changed very oddly in this show. It's used as even more exposition, explaining the Avatar cycle, even though, once again, it's exposited to us again in a few minutes. And I think giving it to Kyoshi was a huge misplay. Like, yes, I get it, the fandom has this weird obsession with Kyoshi, half because they think she's this caricature, frothing mad woman who will kill anyone that crosses her, and the other half because people read her books and thought they were pretty good and know that Kyoshi is pretty far from that caricature. But anyway, why have we given Kyoshi this narration? First off, we don't even know that it's Kyoshi speaking upon first watching. We don't know who it is. But in the cartoon, it's Katara, and yes, it's blatant exposition to start the show, but it's exposition that isn't touched upon again until it's natural. It's exposition that is close to the character from her unique perspective. We learned about her as she delivers the extended intro to the first episode. That despite the war and being isolated and her father leaving, she's still hopeful. Somewhere, the hurting must stop. The shortened version is so iconic because it's good. It wouldn't be iconic if it wasn't. And if they gave Katara the time to actually do the extended opening from episode 1, we wouldn't have to jam all of this hollow dialogue in to just get information across, and we'd learn more about Katara. But then that would feel a bit redundant since we already have the Sozin scenes, right? No, not really, since the Fire Nation is touched upon in Kyoshi's opening too. Instead, we give it to Kyoshi because she is friggin' epic, and the stuff she explains is only explicitly stated again 2 more times in the next 2 episodes. We better leave this 3rd one in and steal the intro from one of our main characters so people really know how the Avatar cycle works. I said in my M. Night adaptation video too, available on Patreon for just a few bucks. I feel like if you're adapting something and it has something iconic, like the Avatar opening monologue and the red background bending, you keep the iconic shit. People want to see it. Transitioning as well as a truck transitions its way down the face of a cliff, let's talk about Aang and flying. Now in this first scene, it could be argued that Aang is just falling with style. Aang slow falls in the cartoon all the time, sometimes in moments you don't even catch. But with how far he moves horizontally, it's really hard to reason against the accusations of flying. And that's just this scene, that's not to mention the other scene where he, flies, for sure, definitely. But I feel like this introduction to airbending was really very flippant. Like you are just now seeing the first airbending outside of the intro. And this is the first thing they show you. If you'd never seen Avatar before, you would think that Aang would be doing this shit all the time. It's the first thing you see him do. Everything conveys information to a viewer. And while yes, it's used nicely to characterize Aang as being a very talented airbender when he lands, that would only make a clueless watcher expect it even more in the future. But we never see it again outside the walls of this episode. And I feel like I've had these kind of talks every few videos since I've covered the comics, but what sets this magic system apart is the physicality and the martial arts aspect to it. And being able to fly around doesn't really lend itself to that. It kind of clashes. And I feel like the show may have realized that as it went on and sort of hopes you forget about these scenes. Not that the magic system is given that much of a highlight anyway. Yeah, we'll get into that in a sec. I find myself thinking this moment where all the airbenders show up, it's the start of a problem that really makes the world feel small. We only have a few stops along the way, and we only meet a handful of people as we cover the actual entire planet from pole to pole. Like if it was just running down the street to the corner store, no problem. But this is supposed to be an adventure. And from the lines in the later episodes, you're really supposed to feel like the characters are on one, but the world feels small. This is the beginning of it. The genocide of the air nomads wasn't a colossal operation of in-sync attacks on 4 different parts of the world. It was just, a pretty big fight that took place mostly in this courtyard, because conveniently, all of the air nomads are here. How much more jaw-dropping would it have been if we got scenes from all 4 of the temples as they were attacked in some horrifying montage? How much grander? Maybe panning to the comet as one shot ends and some poor airbender shouts to his friend about how the comet is making them too strong, so we don't have to have that honestly confusing line from Sozin. And then pan down off of the comet onto another air temple, where the violence seems even more out of hand. Flames shoot even higher at this air temple. You get a feeling of what that character meant through the cinematography. Instead, we get this scene where it's like, whew, that really was a Donnybrook, let me tell you. But really, this is it? Every airbender died here? All of them? How many was there? Like 200?
That's who I am. Not someone who can stop the Fire Nation. Not someone who can stop a war.
I've already gone on about this scene and its ramifications to the story as a whole in my overview to the whole series, so if you somehow found this video first, go watch that one and come back to this. Basically, Aang turning to the camera and just saying what his character is and how he's feeling, like he's pausing the show to explain it, like he's fucking Ferris Bueller, I feel is bad. And yes, I'm stealing this joke from my comment section, and I'm sure someone else has already used it, but here we go, Robot Devil, take it away.
You can't just have your characters announce how they feel. That makes me feel angry!
And Aang leaving like, what, 30 seconds before the temple is attacked somehow makes the world seem even smaller as well? Not in like a physical sense, but in say a scale sense? I'm not sure. The timing being so small between Aang leaving and the Fire Nation attacking makes things seem too convenient. There's probably some sort of writing principle someone in the comments can fill me in on with this. Like 2 completely unrelated but gigantic actions taking place so close to each other with nothing other than coincidence to connect them makes the world feel small. I can't explain it better than those words. This feeling that I'm getting from it. In the cartoon, Aang ran away, got frozen, and then the Fire Nation attacked afterward. A vague afterward, probably within a year. Like, that feels bigger somehow, right? The world isn't just what we're seeing. There's other stuff going on. There's gotta be some kind of term for this. Someone fill me in. It do be kinda a nice little touch that they're wearing shoulder spikes, though. I can appreciate a little Easter egg, So okay, don't get me wrong. I think this fight scene, while not capturing the scale I wanted the genocide to feel like it had, does have some choreography that is pretty cool, at least when it's not in needless slow motion. You have to take into account that this is largely the first time we're seeing a bending fight, which means we need the scene to teach us stuff as well. Think back to the Boomy fight in the cartoon. Overall, not really a standout episode, but it's the first time we see earthbending, and the show makes sure we see it used in all sorts of different ways. We see that you can be creative with it, and that's important. It's teaching us through the fight scene, and I think airbending, for the most part, does a pretty good job in this scene. It shows us that the bending follows the movement of your body. There can be sweeps, you can do great big jumps with it. If you do the right move, you can send 2 guys flying in different directions. You can make a big tornado thing. But I don't think firebending gets enough of a highlight. This is also largely the first time we're seeing firebending. We see a little bit of it in the opening scene, and then Sozin just immolates that guy, which is kind of like, why don't you just do that every time? But other than that, here we are, the first fight. And I think it can feel just too much like the firebenders are just able to shoot flamethrowers out of their hands. It doesn't feel much like bending. You can even see the showrunners didn't feel like a fire punch read well with these extended uses of fire, because it's not one quick burst like a punch. So they had Sozin keep his palms open. And sure, Ozai does that too during the comet, but that was much more clearly like, oh, this dude is on another level right now. Here, the comet almost goes unmentioned, and you might not even figure the firebenders are boosted right now if you're not familiar with the cartoon. Like, if you don't know the cartoon, and Sozin says this line about the comet, are you really gonna know what he means? The bending system feels much less revered and less focused on in this version, and once again, we'll get more into it shortly.
Where's Aang?
Why is that so funny? You notice how he doesn't even really yell Aang, he just yells? It's like he tells the kids to follow him, and then he turns and sees a scary monster and goes, ah! Ah! Daddy!
We've been manning the wall in 3-hour shifts, but it seems some of you can't be trusted to stay at your posts.
Sokka's first lines honestly aren't so bad for where his character goes. Certainly less intricate than his first conversation with Katara in the cartoon, but he's characterized to take himself very seriously, while Katara very much does not. And that pretty much does sum Sokka up in this. Katara gets these lines where she basically discounts Sokka at every turn. She doesn't really take anything he says seriously. Her reactions range from giggling to eye-rolling. The cartoon starts with the two at odds as well, and Katara even gets much angrier with Sokka, but the dialogue here is much flatter. We learn that the Fire Nation hasn't been around in a while, and that their dad isn't here, which will be exposited to the unknowing Aang later again, so what's the point? These are redundant lines due to lines later in the script, so why not spend these lines on the two jabbering and bickering like the cartoon, where they can bounce off of each other, learn about their personality. The first few scenes in the original show are so brilliantly crafted, but these scenes kinda just feel like the "can I copy your homework" meme. It's another iconic moment issue. Like, you're not gonna give me the Fire Nation ba 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 right away. You're gonna hit me with this remix. Keep the iconic shit. Remix it when you can use it multiple times like this, but this is the first time. Give me the... So, is it Katara's water bending that breaks the ice? It's really unclear. It almost feels like the act of feeling any kind of bending around it made the iceberg break, or something. Very hard to tell. Also, I always just kind of assumed the blue beam was coming from Aang, but it's very clearly not. So what really is this blue beam? Just stored up ambient Avatar energy or something? And how in the world did this explosion reverse the way their boat was floating? Surely it would have only hurried it on its way away from them. You like that? A little shot of me being a total asshole about tiny stuff halfway through the video? Yeah, I still got it, don't worry. So does this imply that any imagery of a past avatar will glow? How perfect of an image does it need to be? Does it need to be blessed or something? Can I just carve a smiley face into a blob of clay and say it's Roku and then it has a connection to the avatar?
You think I'm imagining things?
Sometimes light beams are nothing more than celestial glimmers in the winter sky.
Remember that performative quality I pointed out Iroh having? This is the line that first made me notice it. Here it is against the line from the original show that seems to flow a lot better.
That light came from an incredibly powerful source. It has to be him.
Oh, it's just the celestial light.
Couldn't Zuko say like, "Hey Ankh, I know I've been pretty bout this whole Avatar thing lately, but the knickknacks and doodads I collected all started glowing this time, so like I think we might want to take this one a little more seriously."
It'll all be worth it once I return home in glory to take my place as the rightful heir to the Fire Lord.
This is another small change in Zuko's story that I think makes him less sympathetic. Multiple times he mentions he wants to go home to resume his role as heir to the throne. In the original, Zuko just wants to go home, period. Not to assume any role, not to be granted any power, he just wants to go home. He only mentions his role as heir to the throne in one of his most egotistical moments as he stands over a fallen enemy, before he's brutally brought back to reality. Zuko's want for the power that home brings him, and even talking about personal glory a few scenes from now, makes him seem more vain and more actually evil than the cartoon ever did. Which on paper is fine, this is a new take on Zuko, but if they want him to start in this more egotistical, more bought into the Fire Nation cause than ever place, I feel like they needed to give him more moments to get him from here to just having a calm conversation with Aang. He even says the throne is his destiny, straight up. People say that Zuko's motivations are pretty identical, but they're really not. In this show, it seems Zuko wants to complete his impossible task as a legendary aid to the war effort, so he can go home and reassume his powerful position. In the cartoon, Zuko wants to complete his impossible task to restore his personal honor, so that he's allowed to see his country and his family again. Like, you have to take these two shows as they're given to you. You can't just apply thoughts from the cartoon onto this new version of Zuko. If you can't see the difference between those two motivations, I can't really help you. Another small, true overanalyzing moment. My immediate thought with this painting, with Azula's face nearly being obscured, is that Azula really isn't the golden child, and the future scene she's in would lead me to believe that, but apparently at the end of the season, no, it was all just a clever ruse.
Sky Bison. Sky Bison.
Repeating it doesn't help.
You think I could commission art somewhere of the live-action Sokka in the detective hat for these thumbnails?
Water, earth, fire.
Shut up. Shut up. I just want to talk about this really nothing shot really quick. We start on what's called a Dutch angle, which is really just a term for meaning the camera is tilted and the visuals are slanted to one side. Usually a Dutch angle is used to imply that our characters aren't totally aware of the situation, or something has just drastically changed, or maybe reality isn't exactly as it seems, or there's been a horrible realization. It conveys discomfort. The whole world turns, right? That's what the shot is usually used for, to make the world seem unfamiliar, sometimes hostile. But in this application, as Aang's whole world is turned upside down, the angle goes from off its axis to correcting itself, which to me communicates a resolution in the dialogue. But that isn't what's happening. Gran is delivering some pretty devastating news to Aang. This shot should go from normal to the angled camera, if you ask me.
The Fire Nation has conquered most of the world, but the Waterbenders are still fighting back, especially in the north. And the Earth Kingdom is still holding strong.
So Katara's saying that the Fire Nation has conquered most of the world, and then saying except the North, and the Earth Kingdom isn't taken over yet either, and obviously not here, this place isn't under Fire Nation rule, meaning that from what she just said, most of the world means just the Fire Nation. Seems like this line really could have used a rewrite, and yeah, we see maps later where it's clear the Fire Nation has taken some territory, but I must stress, once again, this is our introduction to the world. This has to be treated with more care.
Bending is about energy and balance. By feeling the energy around you, you can find balance. By finding balance, you can feel the energy.
What the fuck did you just say? Can anyone glean anything from that at all? It's just some yin-yang shit where both energy and balance play into each other, but like weirdly, in trying to mystify the bending system with this mumbo-jumbo, you make it far less interesting. Channeling your ki or your Haman or your Nen or whatever isn't gonna help. This is a martial art, it's physical, you need to learn it. It's mental, you need the right mindset. Almost none of it is spiritual, really, but having lines like this makes it just seem like magic. Any other who cares magic from however many other shows, movies, and books. And especially the fact that this energy and balance shit can be applied to multiple different kinds of bending. It makes them less unique. In trying to mystify the bending system, you've done the exact opposite. And it's probably because learning bending takes such a backseat in this show. No need to get into it because we're really not gonna get into it. Man, they really make you wait for that last note, don't they?
He's more than the last airbender, aren't you? You are the Avatar.
Honestly, I'm not really clear on how you put that together. The airbender thing I get, but really that's still a stretch from all the information you have. Can you fucking stop mean-mugging me, Grandma? Fucking hell.
I am Prince Zuko, firstborn son of Fire Lord Ozai.
While Zuko is correct in saying firstborn son here, it sounds clunky. Like you're also the only born son to Ozai, unless this is implying Zuko has a secret little brother or something. It feels like they just wanted Zuko to have a grand sort of entrance speech here, so they just thought, we'll put some Game of Thrones dialogue in there, that'll do it.
What I know is that Dad told me to protect the village.
Yes, but remember what Mom told us too. She said that we have to protect those who can protect themselves.
I wondered in what context Kaya would have said this. I thought maybe it was to explain why Hakoda was leaving for war to her kids, but no, that was only 3 years ago, and Kaya got killed a few years before that. So like what? They're in their little block of ice, hundreds of miles away from any conflict, usually, unless the Fire Nation rocks up. So when would Kaya have said this? It plays into her protecting Katara, but what? She said it when there was some bullying going on at school or something? So like, cool moment and everything, but Sokka got all ready, geared up, got everyone else to their posts, went to the gates and was unarmed. He had to double back to get his club. This quick little fight has a weird problem I don't think any of the others do. A lot of the other fights incorporate hand-to-hand combat, which I think is usually fine, it's not a bad addition. But in this fight, Zuko's attacks seem to be aimed to hit physically while also bending. Like this one even does, and it looks okay. But with a move like this, right? It looks like he's physically trying to kick Sokka in the head, and then the fire trails his foot. So either Sokka gets booted in the head and falls to the ground, and the fire misses him. Sokka ducks the kick and the fire, or Sokka blocks the kick and the fire stops motion. So what's the point in having the fire? Oh, it's a fight. I should start it off with a giant backflip. This is clearly a rock thrown at Zuko here, but he seems to barely react, so I guess they just thought, turn it into a snowball. No one will notice. Well, I fucking noticed.
No one has ever fought for me before. I think you're the bravest person I've ever met.
Shouldn't you be, like, getting tackled and put in chains? Zuko? Hello?
No one has ever fought for me before.
Yeah, there used to be an Airbender kid that went here.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, but they got him.
What does that mean?
I liked him too.
Wait, what do you mean they got him?
And the belief is that by capturing you, the Fire Nation can finally bring that about.
That's a bit of a logical inconsistency, don't you think, Iroh? Aang has been alive and awake in the world for what, 12 hours maybe? Maybe we jumped a day, I don't know. Not much more than that anyway. In the original show, it seemed like before Aang became public knowledge, everyone assumed the Avatar line had just ended. That's why Zuko was given the mission, so there would be no way for him to return home. It only became an important part of the Fire Nation's goals after it was clear that the Avatar had returned. But in this world, Iroh has just explained to me that capturing the Avatar has been of prime importance, seemingly since the war has started. despite there not being any Avatar around. How is capturing the Avatar going to help you finish this war exactly? He wasn't a piece that was on the board until basically right now. What does having the Avatar in your custody really accomplish to help win a war in the context of a war that's been going on for 100 years without an Avatar anyway? In the cartoon, it was tied to Zuko and Zhao's personal goals of trying to get Aang, and that made sense because Aang's not really a threat on a war level at this point, and he hasn't been for 100 years, so why would they be trying to get him? Aang having basically the Force is also not a change I'm a big fan of. Once again, it's not really martial arts anymore, it's just magic. Small motions like this should probably cause small effects if you ask me. But no, he can just do very intricate and dexterous things with airbending. Alright. Must have been the wind.
There's no way you're getting me on that.
They tried. It's really funny that the context of this scene is that Aang has escaped, no one has caught on yet, and Zuko just comes around the corner looking like SpongeGar. I gotta say, the show, even when it turns into a bunch of 3D models and pure animation, sometimes it can look pretty good. Yes, murder, yes! So in this world, where the physics and everything are supposed to be much more grounded, why is it that we have this moment where this physically impossible catch takes place? When, in the cartoon, they went to great efforts to show an actual realistic save of someone falling from the sky, matching their speed and coming up underneath them. But here, either the character's grips would have failed, obviously, or if they somehow did catch Aang, his arm would have probably been torn off. Why is this more cartoony moment in the live action? First of all, can someone teach these guys serpentine? Secondly, and much more obviously, can someone explain to me how Katara, the turbo novice waterbender, summoned water like a mile into the sky? If you're telling me waterbenders can do that, their upper limit should be far above anything we ever get to see. It's just silly. It's like, does anyone really think the water below them should be in Katara's range? Ever, let alone now when she was barely moving water 10 minutes ago? And would Katara, who has lived in this environment her whole life and has only just gotten water to move into the air today, ever think to do this? They kind of give us this moment between Zuko and Aang from the storm right here, but it of course doesn't hit the same. This moment in the storm is supposed to highlight how similar Zuko and Aang have turned out to be, now that we know their backstories. This look holds a lot of complex emotions, but mostly for the viewer. Here, this look doesn't mean anything. Aang's like, huh, that guy sucks, and Zuko's like, grrr. So yeah, I know this seems rushed in this YouTube video, but yeah, no, we're already at the Southern Air Temple. So it's very necessary that Aang sort of talks himself out of the Avatar state here, because if Katara hit him with the "we can beat your family" line, it would have felt hilarious. But with Aang calming himself down, it definitely makes his connection to Katara and Sokka weaker. They help him here when he's upset. That's important. But with Aang just finding a way out of the Avatar state on his own, it makes him feel like he has more control over it than the show implies he does later, which in turn makes things feel even more muddled and like I don't know what the hell is going on. Also, Katara and Sokka have no context for the Avatar state here, since they didn't see Aang do it on Zuko's ship because he didn't. So from their perspective, they're just like, what the fuck, Aang? Cut this shit out! What are you doing? So this was episode 1 of whatever I'm calling this. It wasn't exactly overanalyzing. There was a bunch of small stuff I didn't mention. It was mostly just some larger points in the episode that didn't really fit into the format of the overview video. It kind of borders on the overanalyzing style, but not as in-depth. This video is really mostly a test to see what I can get away with and using so many clips from the same episode and still get it past copyright. If this one gets through, maybe this series will evolve more into the overanalyzing style as time goes on, and I know I can get away with more. We'll see. But as for the episode as an intro to a television series, I don't think it does very well. There are a lot of poorly written scenes that can honestly lead to confusion if you think about them in context with future episodes. Character is far too often lost in the miasma of exposition, and from a perspective of coming in as a fan of the original show, or as someone who's never heard of any of this, what little we've gotten out of these characters isn't enough. To me, characters should nearly always come first. If we care about a character, we can care about what happens to them. Making me care about a fantasy world and its rich history from the start is much harder than making me care about a character or two that have likable qualities. All the other shit can come later, but I gotta be invested first. This video was pretty negative, and that wasn't my intention going in. And I think that's because a lot of the stuff you can talk about is the stuff that the show managed to do really wrong. The stuff the show does right seems to be to the level that it's passable, not praisable. There's not a lot of points that I can go on about for an entire paragraph that are positive. Patreon shoutouts if you want to see 2 brand new videos from me. Support me on Patreon for just a few bucks. Link, as always, is in the description below the video. Biggest shout out of all, and the return of the fabled don't tier goes to, here we go, Dem Doomston, Langston, Osterreichischen, Schlossstraschen, Besitzernamen, Geklakety. Is that it? I think I'm pretty close. It's been a while since anyone's been in the don't tier, but like, this is supposed to be a joke tier. You're not supposed to actually give me this much money. I have nothing that's worth this amount of money, so I guess just everyone that's watching this, take note that this dude with the giant long German or Austrian name, whatever it is, he's got it like that. For real. Fucking look out. Other massive shoutouts go to my other top patrons. Aurora, who stopped a terror attack by bear hugging someone wearing an explosive vest, just had to walk walk it off afterwards. Catch Adorable, who's the first person to conduct a symphony while also driving a train, the double conductor. Gene Cree, who there's an entire Lost Beatles album about just how alright of a person they are. Jordan Hishorn, who often shaves using his personal helicopter blades, just something to get the blood flowing in the morning, you know, wake you up. Lurfax 1, who learned mantis-style kung fu from a 6-foot-tall praying mantis they found. So yeah, I'd say they're pretty good. MC Ren, who can do the fire-breathing trick where you shoot alcohol out of your mouth, except he can do it with water, or Gatorade, or cranberry juice, whatever you got, he can do it. Omega Fighter, who knows a guy for everything. Baking, bomb defusals, bowling. Maybe it's just things that start with B's now that I think about it. Sean Martin, who eats king crab exclusively because it's the only food fit for him. He is asking we discover another king variation of an animal or plant soon, please. Tater of Tots, who wins at poker by telling the other players what cards they have and how many chips they have left and their mother's maiden name. Everyone just gets weirded out and leaves. That blind ginger, who didn't know their blood type, so when they went and got it checked, the results just came back and said ultimate. And Tiago Nascimento, who gets one free item every time he walks into a shop. Dude got a free hot air balloon once, man. I'm so jealous. And my other fuck you money patrons, Ave Varner, Der 50 Kobold, Ian Byrne, Justin Strong, Leferk 13, Luna Invicta, Potato Scream, Stephanie Riches, The Former Meaning of Life, The 1 AM Party, Thomas Lautenbach, and Whitrow. And my god overanalyzers, Two Boots Are Beat, Aang, Alan Garvin, Andrew Watchard, Angel Molina, Blacksmith, Bob Def, Chandler Crump, Kobe Smith, Connor Gallery, Dead Rat Fiasco, Deathly Healer, Dizzy Payne, Dr. Xerox, Dominic Saint, Donut, Emma Not Emma, Aaron Grace, Flamio Hoffman, Gianluca Leandro Magi, I'm a Match, Jackson, Jeremy Rubenstein, John Ajaka, Justin Scott, Kelly, Mac Ianalicio, Mark Rethy, Medium D Speaks, Michael Fallon, Mighty Virus, Nick, Nicholas Abbott, Reese, Rocket Mist, Ryan Gregorikos, Ryan Maxwell, Samuel Vanderplatz, Shane Antonacci, Sean Flowers, Super Snipper, The Long and Short of It, Thomas Dredgen, Thomas Graff, Victoria the Queen, Von Kant, Spell, and some sort of bear face, I don't know what it is. Next up, if this video actually made it to YouTube, more of this.